there is a slight change because of some reasons, and right now we have another speaker. Mr. KG Anand, please, can you come on the dais? A very, very respectable and senior executive of the poultry sector is Mr. KG Anand. Such a huge responsibility Mr. Anand is having on his shoulders and carrying out that with great success.
Thank you for the nice words, sir. I thank the organizers for inviting me for this meeting, wherein a galaxy of scientists, my seniors, my colleagues, Honorable Member of Parliament, Dr. Ranjit Reddy Garu, who is my good friend, Balram Singh Yadav ji, OP Singh ji, several other distinguished people. Already the earlier speakers raised the bar so much, I don't know how much I can come up to your expectations. As you all know, normally the topic that is given to me is a conventional topic in terms of the poultry, the demand, supply, that kind of a one. But this time, the organizers asked me to speak on poultry concerns, especially in terms of the policies of government. As you all know, I think Indian poultry from the last 5 decades has been completely under the private sector, whether in terms of genetics or in terms of diseases or in terms of management. I think the private industry has been developing it, and the industry also grew over the years quite well. As the earlier speaker said, we now stand second for egg production and probably fourth for the chicken production. Numbers aside, I think the industry has been consistently growing, and this is the only sector in the livestock which has shown over 7-8% for the last almost about 5-6 decades. The broiler still continues to grow, the layer also, though maybe in some years had some fluctuations, but overall the industry has been growing steadily. Even though we were under private effort, but if you look at in terms of the support that we got, both in central and state governments, I think it is really exemplary. Whenever we approach for any problem, thanks to friends like Dr. Ranjit Reddy Garu, who took us both at center as well as in the state, the response was immediate and they came to our rescue. Many times, I think the government scientists or team are not that well acquainted with the poultry issues. But when we approached them, the response was immediate and the solutions were also immediately forthcoming. Just to name a few, for instance, in terms of the chicken quarters, when the possibility was there it will be dumped from US, I think immediately the government had responded both in terms of tariff and non-tariff barriers and ensured that dumping doesn't happen. Similarly, when there was case in terms of international court, about 400 million was the penalty that was supposed to be laid because American US government were trying to impose on it. Our government effectively fought the case and ensured that such penalties are not put in. For instance, in the state government, thankfully to Dr. Ranjit Reddy, who has been informing, and our CM, Honorable CM, who is well exposed to the poultry, basically because of Dr. Ranjit Reddy Garu, have come to our poultry many times for our rescue. Almost 6 times, corn was given to us at concessional rates in Telangana. Almost about 13 lakh tons were given. Similarly, exemptions like Nala exemption, the poultry farms in Telangana have to pay only 100 rupees as a tax. There is no other tax levied with the local panchayats. We have got power subsidy of 2 rupees per unit. Almost about 60 crores was given to us, and still another 60 crores is due, which I am sure Dr. Ranjit Reddy Garu will help us to get it. And the power subsidy will continue in the coming years. Like that, we have several instances where, in fact, CM himself talks to Dr. Ranjit Reddy about the problems in poultry, how the Telangana government could be of help. Similarly, Dr. Ranjit Reddy Garu has represented our cause in Delhi. Dr. Sanjeev Ballinji and Honorable Purushottam Rupala ji, our Joint Secretary O.P. Chaudhary Garu, all these people were always responsive whenever we went with an issue. The solutions were immediately given to us, be it in terms of import of soya, which was definitely only because of the efforts made in by Dr. Ranjit Reddy Garu, Mr. Bahadurali and team. And that came a big relief to us because the soya then was selling almost at 100 rupees a kilo. The import permission definitely got us a big relief because the rates came down to 55, 56. And such instances are many. And I think I should, from this platform, thank Government of India and as well as our Telangana government for helping the poultry industries, understanding our problems, and finding solutions for this. You all know the figures because you're all from poultry industry, and all of you are experienced of more than 25-30 years. The contribution from poultry is estimated to be about 1.5 lakh crores. I'm talking about the organized poultry. India is ranked second in egg production and fourth for the chicken meat. Egg production, total egg production is estimated to be about 129 billion, out of which commercial poultry is about 110 billion and backyard is about 20 billion. In terms of percentage, about 88% is from commercial and about 10% is from the backyard. Generally, the industry estimates the table egg production from commercial farms is approximately about 31 to 32 crores and has been steadily growing at 6% plus. This in terms of graphical, the population-wise, if you look at the desi fowl is about 32%, the improved is about 68%, but in terms of numbers, about 88% is from commercial farms and 10% is from the backyard. The chicken meat production is estimated to be approximately 6.4 million tons, almost about 60% of the total meat production, and growing at average of 7% per annum as per the DADF. Industry estimates the broiler placement currently in the range of about 41 to 42 crores, and in season, that is in the coming months, may go up to about 45 crores, steadily going up year after year. The value of poultry production national GDP is estimated to be about 1%, and in the livestock, approximately 14%. You all know in terms of generation of employment, about 25,000 layer farmers directly and about 5 lakh broiler farmers indirectly to over 2 million households, especially in the villages. As per National Action Plan for Eggs and Poultry prepared by DADF, about 30 million rural households are involved in backyard farming. The price of the most important product, the point is the price of poultry product has risen the least in the last 3 decades, as you see in the next section. The organization has done the consumer price of eggs in 91 countries, and India stands the least in terms of the consumer price. As you can see, US is about $4.5 per dozen eggs. In India, it's only about 0.95. This keeping the price low because poultry products are mostly consumed by the middle class and the low middle households. And in India, as you're aware, it's mostly the wet market, which is highly price sensitive. And the prices have been kept the least, even if you compare with countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan and others, the price at which Indian consumer is getting eggs is the least. This has happened basically because the genetic gain over the years, as said by earlier speakers. As you could see, when I joined the industry, the eggs then were about 270 for 52 weeks of lay. Now currently it's almost about 343 and now most of the farmers are getting about 330, 335 eggs in 52 weeks of lay. Similarly, if you look at broilers, genetic improvement is fabulous. In 1981, it was about 2.5 as an FCR, and the body weight then was hardly about 1.5. Now the FCR is about 1.5 with a body weight of 2.4 kilos by about 38, 39 days. As you can see, the number of days it takes to get 2 kilo body weight has come down over the years. Now about by 32 days, you're getting the body weight of 2 kilos. This I'm only saying to see how industry poultry sector has grown over the years, totally under private effort. This is in terms of the different decades, how it was in 60s, 70s, 80s, which most of you are aware of. This has been the growth over the years in terms of eggs and as well as the chicken. As you could see, it is consistent and growing at about 7% to 8%. Now coming to the concern part of it in terms of what are the concerns for the future. The biggest concern the industry faces in terms is about the availability of raw material. If you look at the poultry feed, is approximately estimated about 29 million tons of poultry feed, of which, if you look at the maize, the production in the country is estimated to be 32 million tons, and poultry requirement is about 16 million tons. The other segment, which requires maize, as listed, cattle feed, starch, etc., almost takes the total 31 million tons of the production of 32. In any year, if there is any seasonal effect, or the availability is less, we have seen skyrocketing with the feed prices. Similarly, if you look at the soya bean, it's estimated about 6.5 million tons of production, and poultry consumes almost about 5.5 million tons, which we have seen over the last 3-4 years. The production as of today is being concentrating only in few states. For instance, in broilers, if you look at the major states like West Bengal, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, almost takes about plus 60%. And in the years to come, the new centers of growth are like Bihar, UP, Northeast, Rajasthan, and all these states, which will add to the requirement of the feed and the maize. Similarly, if you look at eggs, the total production, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Telangana consumes almost about 50% of this production. And the new states like Odisha, West Bengal, UP are likely to be the growth centers for future for egg production too. In one of the presentations, Mr. Raghav had a presentation in terms of what is the requirement. The maize, which is currently about 16 million tons consumed by poultry industry, in the years to come, it will grow by almost about 1 million ton every year, both in terms of broilers and layers together. Similarly, soya, if you look at what we are currently consuming, about 5.5 million tons, is likely to go up. We would require at least about 8.5 million tons by 2030. The question is, where do we and how do we meet the requirement of feed? If you look at the agri challenges in India, the first problem is in terms of the land constraint. Most of the holding by farmers are less than about 5 acres, and you have less area under irrigation. There's a water shortage, and the way there is a monsoon like this year, because of El Nino, probably the monsoon would not be that well spread like in the last or earlier years. As a result, probably the productivity will be far less. In terms of varieties, if you look at the local varieties and low yield crops is what is affecting Indian agriculture. And lastly, as of now, the government has still not approved for introduction of genetically modified. And because of the small land holding, mechanization is also not that prevalent in Indian agriculture. The concern today is that government has decided for diverting food for fuel, whether it is broken rice or whether it is maize. The target of government is that we should be able to produce at least take up to 20% of blending. Is this advisable? Because if you look at US, maybe there it is possible because they're producing something like 380 million tons of corn, and diverting part of that production for fuel is okay. But in Indian context, where they have to meet the requirement of food and feed, diverting maize or broken rice for fuel, we don't know how far this is advisable. I think there is a need probably for national debate whether such ambitious target is required and how it's going to affect the poultry in the coming years needs to be discussed. Poultry industry definitely deserves support in terms of having adequate production of cereals and increase the productivity through introduction of GM seeds and bring more area under irrigation. We import almost about, I'm told, 3.5 million tons of soya oil, which is equivalent to 20 million tons of soya bean. Can government look at in terms of allowing end users to use imported meal? Because there are now big corporates, integrators, who could probably be allowed to import soya meal. To that extent, maybe the pressure would be less on the industry. Is it possible for government to think in terms of bean import? I mean, these are only questions which we need to discuss, and probably government need to think for the coming years for poultry, when the requirement is going to be huge for feed, be it corn or soya. Can we look at some solutions, either in terms of bean import or in terms of allowing corn year-round if the domestic prices shoot up like it happened 2 years back? Maize was selling something like about 30 rupees. Soya went up to almost about 100 rupees. Can we have a blanket policy that whenever the prices go beyond a range, which should not affect the maize and soya farmers, they should get their MSP, but overall the industry should be able to get the required feed? I think such forums would definitely help to highlight issues and bring it to the notice of government so that we could find solutions for the same. The next is about the skyrocketing of feed ingredient prices. You would have seen in the last few years the price which has shot up. As you can see, the maize and soya that went up to very high levels, making the cost of production go up. We will not be able to pass the increase in cost to the end user because 95% plus is in the wet market. And yes, change is happening, but probably the proportion will still be high for the wet market. In that context, if in case the cost of production of egg and chicken, for instance, the egg is almost about 5 rupees now per egg, and chicken is almost closing to about 100. Can we collect that price year-round from the farmer? As you could see, the rates for the broilers over the years, the green indicates the months where the recovery, where the revenue was more than cost of production, and the red indicates the lost months. Earlier, we used to have almost about 8 to 9 months or 10 months of green, where the sale price was higher than cost of production. But if you look at the last 2 years, the months where the losses are high, and similarly for the eggs, if you look at for the last 2 years, most of the layer farmers are losing money, which means at this prices itself, the corn price of around 23, 24, and the soya price about 55, 60, the farmers are not able to make money, or the corporates are not able to make money. If in case in the coming years the price of feed ingredients further go up, and if availability is not matching to our requirement, then how do we continue poultry farming if in case the losses would be of this nature? Some of the solutions could be that we could request Government of India to allot non-edible either broken rice or wheat or ragi to layer farmers, because in layer rations we can definitely use the other cereals. To that extent, the pressure on corn would probably come down. If possible, such commodity could be given at concessional rates like recently governments in Telangana and others they gave. That would definitely help the industry, especially for the layer farmers. Similarly, import of corn and soya when the local domestic prices skyrocket, as it happened in the last few years, maybe as a policy, year-round they could keep it that if the corn prices go beyond 24 or the soya prices go beyond 60, import is all allowed. If that kind of a policy is made, it would definitely help the Indian poultry farmers to keep the cost of production at a reasonable level. Lastly, in terms of rationalization of duties on feed additives, you could say I have not presented the chart in terms of how the DLM prices and lysine etc. went up. Almost all the feed additives are also going up. Is there a possibility for rationalization of duties? The next concern is about the emerging diseases. As you all know, in the last few years, we have seen the challenges, whether it is LP or whether it is ILT, and where the solutions were taking time and the industry had high mortalities. Unfortunately, you look at in any pocket, you have multiple species, both in terms of commercial layers, the commercial broilers, the backyard poultry, all being together, and huge populations in a farm, and multi-age groups. As a result, the disease challenges are continuous, affecting the productivity and also giving high mortalities. There is a need for government to step in and probably look at the effective surveillance, because till date we have kept poultry away from the government agencies and we have done mostly the private. But now a time has come, I think we have to partner with the research institutes of government and look at in terms of surveillance, because the solutions otherwise when we submit from private, the acceptance from government is very slow. Like we know about ILT vaccine, it is prevalent for the last almost about 10 years, but it is still not noticed in government labs. So for that reason, I think we have to probably have this partnership between the government labs and industry so that the emerging challenges can be identified in time and solutions, vaccine solutions also can be bring in. For instance, in the recent the LP vaccine, because of the effort put in by Dr. Ranjit and Dr. Sanjeev Balian, we got it. But even for HP, I think such a solution is required. I'm told even in the other countries, they are looking at introducing vaccines for HP because you're all aware that it is prevalent, and especially in certain pockets, it takes such an upper hand, the mortalities go to very high levels. So to meet such challenges, I think we need to have this vaccine solutions, and this is where I think having effective surveillance and ensuring that timely solutions are given to the industry to bring down the mortality. And also the results are need to be constantly monitored because the virus mutates, and we have to have, like it has happened in COVID, if in case the new strains have to be identified and new vaccines have to be permitted, I think such a solution should be given at the earliest so the industry could benefit out of it. There is a requirement of similar vaccine, the same vaccine in the neighboring countries, Bangladesh, Pakistan and others. I think we need to export such vaccines. There is a demand, and this is where I think industry and government can probably work together to also see how we could export the vaccine that we are going to manufacture, especially for the emerging diseases. Multiple agencies monitoring on poultry. Nowadays, if in case you want to start a new farm anywhere in the country, it's so very difficult. The approval that we require from different agencies, you need the approval from Gram Panchayat, the DTPC approval, the pollution board clearance, the irrigation department clearance, the Department of Mining, Electricity Department, Department of Labor, Industries Department. By the time you get all the clearances, it would take minimum of 8 to 9 months. And I'm told we have to also go in for the registration with the state Department of Animal Husbandry. All this would mean lot of processes and lot of delays. Is it possible to have a single window clearance for future? Because the growth potential is there. Our per capita currently is about 1995. We want this per capita consumption to go up to something like 180. We want the chicken, which is currently at about 4.5 to 5 kilos, to go up to about 11 kilos. This is possible only if in case there is a ease of starting new units. Whether it is in UP or Bihar or Telangana, we find starting a farm has become extremely difficult. And I think somewhere we need to have clearance which becomes for new farms to start easily. Even after starting farm, we see that constantly there is a pressure from the local bodies and we need to keep them satisfied. Even for a well-maintained farm, even for a breeding farm, which is a cost added to the running of the farm. Is it possible to get some kind of a guidelines? There are guidelines issued, but in spite of that, we find that it is not that easy to start a new farm. And I think there is a need for us to discuss, and probably we should look at whether there is a possibility to start a national poultry board so that effective communication is there between the poultry farmers and the government. There is a huge potential for consumption of eggs under the PM Portion scheme. If in case we look at whatever is currently introduced, it mostly in the southern states, the Andhra Pradesh. It's only in the southern states, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, in a minimum quantity. Only in Andhra Pradesh they are giving about 5 per week, and in Telangana about 4 per week. But rest of there is a lot of places where eggs are still to be introduced. If you look at the beneficiaries, there are about under midday meal 11 crore beneficiaries there. If in case 2 weeks are given, that would immediately give a consumption of about 704 crores. Similarly, under the Anganwadi scheme, where there are beneficiaries of 10 crores, if in case eggs are given, about 2 to be implemented, we have a huge quantity of consumption coming in, almost about 1,000 crore eggs. I think it is required of industry and government to follow up to see that such midday meal program eggs are introduced so that we get a huge potential in terms of consumption. The next is about the export of poultry products. As earlier Mr. Balram pointed out, currently we are doing hardly 1% or less than 1% of the potential that is there in the world. In fact, geographically, India is ideally located to cater to the Middle East or the Far East. But for the last 3-4 decades, we have been only producing for the local consumption. But now time has come for us to tap the export market. And for that, I think we have to have large organized farms, and maybe in terms of areas, we have to look at the zoning, because compartmentalization is currently done, but more for the purpose of few farms taking up export of either parent chicks or to the limited quantity. But if in case zoning, a large area like Namakkal or Telangana or Godavari district, such areas are brought under a zoning, then volumes could be done, because we find that somewhere in the pocket of northeast or somewhere there is a bird flu announcement, the entire country is not allowed to export. If in case zoning is practiced, then it would allow us to export regularly and probably consistent volumes. This could be one where we need to discuss our government officials with OIE for having zoning of certain tracts. I know there are certain difficulties in terms of natural boundaries to be there for area to be called off zoning, but if in case we can find solution, maybe then exports in a larger volume would be possible. We are all aware that in exports, the quality when it comes, it basically the residues which is the issue, whether in terms of antibiotics or in terms of pesticide residues. I think there is a need for registration to be passed in the country to see that the antibiotics what are available is similar to what is practiced in Europe or US, and maybe such antibiotics there is no indiscriminate use and it is only on prescription. I think this is where the change is required in the country to, if in case we have to export large volumes. If in case antibiotics are available without prescription to be used in the farm, I think then it would be somewhere or other get into the system. And if in case we have to tap the export market, I think industry also has to practice proper procedure for using antibiotics and the right antibiotics and the withdrawal period. As earlier Mr. Balram Singh pointed out, I think the Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Department Fund, which would be expiring by March end, I think needs to be continued. I think we should already a request has been made, because that fund is being used for establishing the feed mills, for the hatcheries, for the EC houses. I think it's very good for the industry, and I think we all need to make an effort to see that that fund is extended. And we would definitely request Dr. Ranjit Reddy Garu and others to help us in getting such approval. Clarification required because we find that Animal Welfare Board has brought poultry also as animal and not allowing dressing of chicken in the shops, which is really surprising because we find in Gujarat, especially in Surat, shops were asked to shut down, treating that poultry is also animal and we need veterinary certificate at the point of dressing. I think such clarification is put from government to say that poultry is not an animal, it's a bird and it can be retail, it can be dressed. Lastly, the promotion of eggs and chicken, I think as a healthy protein, government should in their forums advertise and I think it would help for removing the malnutrition and help the industry for consumption. Conclusion, for the future growth, I think we require maize and soya and in this context, I think definitely government can take up steps like introduction of GM and probably allowing industry, especially end users to import corn and soya and the price at which corn and soya should be available should be comparable to international prices, this kind of a seaboard prices, because otherwise Indian poultry farmers are at a disadvantage. Our prices are much higher, and if in case we have to compete with players like Brazil and US, and if our feed prices are very high, it would be not possible. So we need, if in case we have to be a big player in the world market, the feed prices definitely need to be in a range, and this is where I think government can look at giving corporates to import directly the feed ingredients like corn and soya when the domestic prices are on the higher side, and surveillance and timely solutions for meeting the disease challenges, and government to include eggs in the noon meal program, and lastly, remove constraints and take up exports through zoning. Thank you very much.